Hello everyone and welcome back to another Sims speed build video. I hope you guys are all having a great day so far. So today I wanted to create something that would probably be appropriate and something that would be quite needed from a lot of simmers, which is a huge family home. And I just thought of creating something that was like a very huge, spacious end of your legacy sort of family type of mansion or home. And I wanted to build it within Del Sol Valley on the 50 by 40 lot because I feel like despite it not being the biggest lot, I still feel like you can get so much out of it, as you guys can already see right now from the layout and the actual shaping of the home. There is just like a bunch of different space that you can utilize throughout this entire home overall, and I feel like you can definitely turn it into like your own personal huge mansion. And that was sort of like my main goal when I was building this huge mansion for you guys. And I was trying to create it and focus on having like a deep emphasis on families, mainly because I just feel like a lot of people obviously play The Sims with their families and stuff like that, and typically most of my huge modern mega mansions focus on like a single simmer or like a lifestyle, if that makes sense. Like I kind of make it seem like an entertainer's home rather than like making it feel a little bit more cozier and like trying to include all like the household items that you would probably expect for like your families and stuff like that. You know, there's like a bunch of different stuff that you need to consider when you're creating like a family home. And I feel like this build in particular is like the perfect one, mainly because I just feel like it features everything that you would probably want within a very idealistic sort of like big family home. And I hope you guys also do end up loving and enjoying this build as much as I enjoyed creating it and showcasing it for you guys within the speed build. But right now we're just sort of like getting the shaping of the home down properly, just like trying to make it feel as cozy as possible from the exterior as much as it is on the interior as well. So the front of the home, as you guys can already see, like with the unique roof shaping and design that we have, we sort of had these like nice curves going on here and there. And I was actually inspired by a real life home while I was creating that sort of like front roof area. However, the rest of the home, such as the interior, the back garden area, as well as like the rest of the home, like the exterior and the interior, is completely like fresh and it's not really recreated or like inspired by a real life home. I just went with like what I felt looked nice. And you guys would obviously tell, if you guys have been on the channel for quite a while now, that how much like the interior resembles the rest of the ones that I've done in my previous builds, because I just really love creating with this specific sort of like color palette and like style that has been utilized within this build. But yeah, I'm just super happy with how it turned out, especially with it not really having like an actual goal. I wasn't really sure how the exterior was actually going to end up turning out to be. However, I definitely feel like the build resembles a nice wealthy family home, which is sort of like the main goal that I had as I was building this build. And as you guys can already see, I was just like trying to add a bunch of different like pockets here and there poking out from the main structure of the home. And I was really trying to just like add as much space as possible to this build, so that if you guys did end up having to like, you know, extend the family or just like add a bunch of different rooms later in the future, you guys definitely will be able to do that. I just sort of like went with like a general floor plan that I thought felt appropriate. You guys can by all means like go ahead and change it however you guys want to. But for the back garden area of the home, you might actually notice that since we're building on a 50 by 40 knot, it's not a perfect square. So we do have quite a lot of extra space for the backyard area. However, I tried to get as much use out of this huge space that we had as much as possible. So you would see me try to add a bunch of different outdoor like entertainment spaces, a bunch of different nice small little like seating areas, and like some small little activities here and there as well, such as like swinging and the monkey bars, and also added a simple basketball court as well, which I feel like was kind of like a nice unique feature that I feel like you would probably expect within a family home of this size. And right now I try to add this like sort of indoor outdoor living experience off to the side of the home, as you guys can see, like these sort of like gazebo style but like attached to the home. But it wasn't actually working out because I feel like it kind of made the back garden look a little bit too basic for my liking, so I actually ended up changing that, and we don't actually have any like covered outdoor space. But if you guys do like the way it looks as it is in the video, you guys can obviously go back and change it however you guys like. But I feel like the end result of like keeping it a bit more open and airy definitely felt the vibe, and it looked a lot nicer that way in my opinion. And now we're actually moving on into adding the doors, windows, arch frames, and all of the wallpapers and stuff like that. And right now you guys can obviously already see how basic it looks. It's kind of like a nice simple shell. However, this actually does end up changing quite a lot because I didn't actually want to utilize windows with plain white frames. I feel like it looked a little bit too basic, especially when we have these plain white walls going across the entire home. I feel like that didn't look interesting at all, in my opinion. I like the way it looks. It's really simple, but I feel like it's not something that a lot of people would enjoy or would prefer to have in their game, especially for a complex and huge build like this. I really don't want to keep to like a black and white color scheme. I feel like it might look a little bit too dull. So instead, we do actually end up changing quite a lot of the wallpapers throughout the entire home for the interior and the exterior, and we do actually end up changing all of the windows as well. So you might see these base game ones that I'm utilizing right now. However, I believe some of them do actually end up changing, because I feel like they looked a little bit too skinny and too tall for my liking. So I ended up changing it to these ones, which I feel like look a lot more wider, and I feel like it fits the vibe that I was trying to go for. And I also ended up incorporating some of the glass windows that came from the Greenhouse Haven kit. So yeah, I feel like those ones just work very nicely with these modern homes that I tend to build within The Sims 4. And I want to get off topic just for a few seconds, just to let you guys know that I am super appreciative of all of the support that you guys have given me so far on all of my social media platforms, regardless of whether it's Instagram, TikTok, Patreon, YouTube. I truly do appreciate every single one of your individual supports. And we're also super close to reaching 6,000 subscribers on YouTube. So thank you so much for even helping me reach that milestone. And I'm just super appreciative of every single one of you who have decided to support me and all of my speed builds that I provide to you guys. I really do appreciate every single one of your supports, and it definitely does not go unnoticed. And if you guys are new here and this might be the first video that you stumbled upon watching, I highly recommend you guys to just check out my channel, see if you guys like it, see if you guys like the builds that I create and stuff like that. And if you guys do, I would highly recommend you guys to stick around, consider subscribing, as I do tend to post every single week as much as I can. And I also do post on my other social media platforms as well, if you guys are interested in like other short form content as well. But yeah, so besides all of that rambling, as you guys can already see, we pretty much changed up all of the window frames that we have for the front of the home. And I actually was super happy with the interchangeable windows that we had already going on. So I used a bunch of like smaller windows, a bunch of like taller windows, a bunch more like framed ones, just like tried to make the build look a little bit more interesting overall, despite it having like a lot of different unique archways and like a bunch of different sort of like areas that poke out from the main compartment of the home. I feel like changing the wallpaper like this and like adding a few bits here and there that look a bit darker, a bit brighter, definitely does accentuate the build a little bit more and makes it look a lot more interesting. And I also ended up using the base game sliding glass doors, because I just feel like they work super nicely in all of my modern builds, and it's kind of like a win-win for both of us, for me and you guys, mainly because it's a base game item and everyone can use it, and especially since it's such a cool and modern looking glass door, I feel like it's super suitable for these modern mansions that I tend to build on the channel. And we're actually moving on into focusing on the back garden area for a while now, and I actually really love how this back garden turned out, because I didn't actually have a specific sense of direction while creating this back garden. Like, I wasn't going off of any inspiration pictures and stuff like that, so I was just going off of what I thought looked best. And I feel like it actually turned out to be something that looked truly unique. And I actually was super inspired by a previous build that I did, I believe like a few months ago now, where I created this outdoor gym area as like a separate compartment from the home. So it's like its own little house that houses the gym equipment and stuff like that. And in real life, it will probably be utilized as a pool area and stuff like that, or like a pool maintenance shed. But I wanted to recreate something that looked kind of unique and made different parts of the home a little bit more functional. So I made like an off the home sort of like gym area, and I feel like it was kind of like a cool, unique concept. And I actually really enjoy creating stuff like that within these huge modern mansions, because it makes a home feel a bit more luxurious and big. Because like, who really has a separate compartment of the home that is just like housing a specific office area or like a gym, you know? I feel like it's definitely a very unique feature that a home can have. And once again, just like adding some nice simple accent wall pieces here and there, just like trying to make some nice dark and bright sort of like contrasting walls, and I feel like it makes the home look a little bit more interesting overall as well, especially since we have a lot of roofing going across this entire build. I feel like the roofing itself as well also makes this home look a little bit more detailed than usual as well. And I'm just like super happy with the placement of all of the windows and stuff like that, and just like trying to make everything come together. And I feel like it definitely worked out for this build in particular. And for the main back garden area of the home as well as the front and the interior, we do actually have quite a few bits of platforming here and there, and I feel like that also definitely accentuated this build overall as well. So you would see quite a lot of details regarding platforms for the interior and exterior. And right now for the exterior, you guys can already see it actually shapes the pool into creating this nice L shape, and I feel like this was definitely like a nice unique feature that I could create for this build without having to like, you know, create the usual rounded pools or like a basic sort of like rectangular shape. I feel like just like adding a nice little unique design to it definitely makes it feel and pop a little bit more than the regular swimming pool, if that makes sense. And since we had quite a lot of space to work with, I really wanted to incorporate some simple activities as well. So despite having basketball right off to the corner of the build, we do actually have a bunch of different other activities going across this entire garden. And I also opted for utilizing some different fencing pieces for this build in particular as well. I sort of like don't really tend to utilize a lot of fencing for the like perimeter of all of my homes and stuff like that, mainly because I feel like I build all of my builds on like these smaller or like privated areas. Like the one in Brindleton Bay is like completely closed off by gates, so you don't really have to add some additional sort of like safety or like fencing around the entire home, unless you wanted to add some like extra details and stuff like that, of course. But for this build in particular, I just ended up going for these nice, simple, basic white one. And I feel like it worked super nicely because I just feel like it just like makes it feel a bit more private, especially since it's a family home, which would probably consist of kids. And especially since the lot that I'm building in isn't really that kid friendly, especially since it's looking straight down a cliff. I feel like it kind of made sense to just like add some nice, simple safety features, as you would probably expect within a family home like this. And of course, I also ended up adding this nice, simple, sizable basketball area right off to the corner of the home. And I feel like it felt super appropriate for this build because I feel like since you will be growing up with kids, you want them to be engaged within activities and stuff like that. I know it's not real life, but you still want to like play it out as if it is. At least I kind of like to do that. I tend to create all of my builds based off of like real life scenarios and stuff like that. So you'll probably see quite a lot of like realistic features in all of my builds. And to me personally, it's kind of like a fun challenge to create something that feels realistic, even though it isn't. Because of course, playing within The Sims, nothing really is that realistic. And I feel like just like trying to create something that does look realistic is kind of like a cool achievement in my opinion. And that's like the main goal when I'm creating these builds. However, I definitely would want to expand the different type of like styles and designs that I create for my builds in the future as well. So if you guys are interested in stuff like that, stay tuned, because I will actually consider creating some nice unique styles, such as like some fantasy or like fake looking suburban homes and stuff like that. But right now I'm like kind of focused and I really enjoy creating these like more realistic designs. And for the main foliage and the exterior of the home, I tried to make it feel a little bit more tropical, a bit more sort of like luscious. So instead of like adding like a bunch of different vibrant, bright plants and like colorful flowers and stuff like that, I wanted to keep it quite minimalistic and simple. I wanted it to look well taken care of, and I feel like this build can also be incorporated within other worlds and other lot types as well without having too many issues with it, because I haven't really done anything that focuses on it being primarily based in Del Sol Valley, if that makes sense. So I didn't really try to like copy the foliage or like do anything of that sort. I just like tried to make a nice, simple, generic family home. And yeah, so I also wanted to create some nice, simple skylights here and there within certain compartments of the roofing. And I feel like it actually turned out to be quite a nice and effective way of creating some additional details to the exterior of the build, especially since we don't really have a lot of exterior sort of like roofing pieces and textures besides the, you know, the usual fireplaces and stuff like that. I really want to add some nice simple skylight details here and there, just like trying to make the exterior look as interesting as possible. And yeah, I feel like it turned out super nicely, especially for a family home like this. And of course, just like adding some nice simple details around the basketball court area itself as well. Just like try to add some fake green grass as well, because I feel like if you guys wanted to add some additional kids activities in the future here and stuff like that, you guys can definitely go ahead and change it out and like do whatever you guys want to. Because I feel like a lot of people who would probably play with families would probably add like a nice simple kiddie pool, that water sliding pool thing. And especially since we're getting the slides that lead you straight into the swimming pool as well, I feel like that would be like a nice simple addition to this build once the Adventure Awaits expansion pack comes out. But speaking of the Adventure Awaits expansion pack, I was actually super excited to hear that another expansion pack was coming out, mainly because I just feel like regardless of what people think, like the Sims team has to come out with expansion packs and like other stuff for the game to make it feel as lively as possible, which I kind of get. And especially since people have like their own free will, like they can purchase the packs regardless of whether they want it or not. I do also understand how a bunch of different people also argue about how the game isn't really in a stable state and it causes a lot of issues for people's games where they can't even play with the existing packs that they have. I definitely understand where every single person is coming from, because we invest so much money into the game and then not having to be able to play it to the standard that we expect it to be in, it's kind of frustrating, especially since like you expect to, you know, just like have a bug-free experience and gameplay. However, I do also understand the Sims team in the sense that they want to just like create as much content as possible so that people don't get bored of the stuff that they currently have, which I feel like is kind of like an understandable statement as well. However, I feel like definitely focusing and prioritizing the actual stabilization of the game is quite important in order to make the entire fan base a bit more happier than usual. But regardless of all of the negativity that has been surrounding the game overall, I still feel like the Adventure Awaits expansion pack does feature some nice unique features. I personally feel like the getaway system is going to be quite a cool feature from that expansion pack, especially since you're going to be able to create a bunch of different lot types and just like a bunch of different venues that you probably wouldn't have been able to create previously. I know a lot of people have obviously created a bunch of different retreats and stuff like that, myself included. However, I feel like this time actually being able to make those functional and like having a whole system implemented within the game is kind of like a really cool feature. I just hope it's not like a recreation of Outdoor Retreat just like turned into an expansion pack, because I feel like we already have the bug catching feature. But I feel like the Adventure Awaits expansion pack definitely does come with quite a few unique features, and I do also really like having the additional gym equipment as well, because if you guys have seen or have been a member of the channel for quite a while now, I do actually complain quite a few times when it comes to the gyms that we don't have anything to place within them. And especially since I create these like huge modern houses, I just have like a bunch of different empty space within all of my gyms because there's nothing else to create within them or add within them. So I just try to make it look as interesting as possible by like repeating a few of them back to back, which I feel like can get a bit tedious. But I feel like just like adding some nice simple refreshed gym equipment is definitely going to be very helpful. But I feel like, why did it take 10 years to get a bicycle or like dumbbells? You know, I feel like it definitely should have been added way long ago, but I'm not really going to complain, especially since it's coming out now, I guess. And I also really like how we have that really huge modular playground. I feel like that's like a very cool and creative way to create some like huge, big, interesting family parks, which I feel like is kind of like a nice unique feature, and definitely would be something that I'll probably end up creating once the expansion pack comes out. I feel like it would be really fun to create a lot type that isn't a residential one, because I've been creating quite a few residentials recently and I haven't really created anything that resembles any like commercial lots or parks. But yeah, so right now we're just focused on adding some nice simple furniture pieces for the back garden area of the home. So we have a small little area where we house the barbecue area and the actual like family outdoor seating area. And I ended up going for these event items, and I actually really love the look of that wooden texture that we have for the table and chairs, and I really love how they match super nicely together. And right next to where we had this dining tables and chairs, I actually wanted to incorporate a nice simple cozy fireplace, but I actually ended up really liking the Desert Luxe Kits fireplace, and I ended up adding that right next to where we had the outdoor dining area. And instead I ended up utilizing this small sort of like modern one in this small little like nook area of the home, and I just tried to add some nice small little cozy seating areas off to this section of the home. And right now I'm just showcasing you guys the overall interior layout and design. So I did actually end up skipping me creating the entire floor plan, because I feel like it's just a bit too tedious to see someone create an entire floor plan within a speed build. But I just ended up going around and showcasing what all of the rooms look like. And now we're actually moving on into furnishing the interior, and we're starting off with the kitchen itself. And initially when I was creating this build, I kind of wanted to create a farmhouse style, but it just ended up going off of that design. But the interior definitely does feature and incorporate a bunch of different wooden furniture pieces, and I just really love the overall look and design of all of it. So I actually ended up opting for the base game kitchen cabinets overall, and I just really love the look of these kitchen cabinets. And I'm definitely a very big fan of these base game kitchen cabinets, because I pretty much use them in all of my modern builds, mainly because I just feel like they pretty much serve the purpose of feeling very luxurious, especially with that marble tabletop, and especially since it just has a bunch of different color swatches within itself as well. I feel like it kind of gives me a bunch of different opportunities to create something that looks very unique. And I believe this is one of the color swatches that I haven't really used quite often, which is this sort of like more woodeny textured one. And I feel like for this build in particular, where I'm trying to get a cozy vibe out of it, I feel like it definitely worked out super nicely overall. And once again, we're actually utilizing the tallest wall heights for this build in particular itself as well. So we had quite a lot of wall space to work with, and just like try to decorate it and just like trying to make it look as interesting as possible despite having these super tall walls. And yeah, just like tried to create something that felt and looked very fancy while also trying to make it feel as cozy as possible as well. Because once again, I'm just like trying to create a family suitable environment while also trying to make a very luxurious home, and it kind of is difficult to get both of those across, especially when you have quite a lot of space to work with. And yeah, just like try to add some nice simple shelving unit pieces, and also utilizing the cabinet pieces themselves as well, just like trying to create a variation within the kitchen itself. And once again, just like utilizing these growing together tiles, which is pretty much my go-to tiles when it comes to the kitchen itself. I just feel like it works super nice as like a backsplash, And I just feel like it worked within this kitchen in particular itself as well, because it contrasts super nicely with the bright kitchen cabinets that we have with that dark tiled wall. I feel like it just looks super interesting overall. And of course, just added some nice simple clutter pieces here and there, and of course added these little island tables and chairs. But yeah, I just feel like this kitchen turned out super grand and extravagant, while also trying to factor that homely feature that I was trying to go for. And I of course just added some nice simple tabletop clutter, such as like some simple flowers, a nice simple tray, along with like a fruit bowl, and just like the typical stuff that you would expect within a kitchen, like cookbook, and like some bunch of different pots and pans, and like some plates here and there, which I feel like definitely made the kitchen feel a little bit more lively without having too much clutter to the point where it looks a bit too tacky. And especially since we're going for that more modern vibe and feel, I really want to keep it as simple as possible as well. And for the main dining table that we have within the interior of the home, I of course added a nice simple baby chair off to the side as well, especially since we're focusing on that more family element. I tried to incorporate some more family features here and there throughout the entire build. I really was happy with the placement of the dining table itself as well, especially since it's sort of like in the center of where we have that really tall hallway that leads you from one wing of the home to the other. And I really love how it sort of like sits right in the center of where we have everything. I feel like it feels and makes a lot of sense to just like add a dining table in a certain environment and placement like this. And I just really love the overall design and color scheme that we have going across the entire build overall as well. I just feel like it worked super nice and cohesively. Once again, we're also utilizing the timber flooring which came from the Eco Lifestyle expansion pack. These orange wooden planks, I feel like they work super nicely in a family home, and it's pretty much one of my go-to floorings when it comes to these modern homes. I feel like a wooden flooring definitely does make the home feel a little bit more cozier than usual. And right now I'm trying to create a unique looking fireplace, so I ended up utilizing most of the base game objects while creating this fireplace so that it is suitable and works appropriately for every single person who has the base game. And I wanted to create this nice open fireplace area, and I feel like it turned out very nicely overall. I feel like it's like a really cool and unique feature within the build itself, where you have the fireplace right in the center of where we have this main sort of living space of the home, and you can see right through the fireplace, you know, if that makes sense. So we're placing these hood ranges right on top of where we have the fireplace, and those are pretty much like pretending to act as if they are just like a floating wall piece. And I ended up adding a TV right on top of it, and I feel like it looked super nice and modern just by like creating a nice unique design like this. I tried to create a lot of unique designs throughout this entire build just to make it feel a little bit more interesting. And in most of my builds, I typically go for these like more simplistic L-shaped designs and couches and stuff like that. And I just wanted to utilize all of the game objects as they were without having to like merge them or like try to create some like fake L-shaped designs or overusing the Dream Home Decorator modular sofa pieces. So instead I decided to add some nice simple side tables to either side of the sofas, and of course added a nice simple fancy looking coffee table right in the center where it's appropriate for every single person who's seating around it. And I just feel like this living space itself just feels super grand, especially with the unique feature that we have for the table and like fireplace console unit area. I feel like it's like a really cool and unique feature to have within a very luxurious build like this. And this is like one of the main reasons why I just love this home so much, because I feel like that in itself just looks super interesting, and it's not something that you would probably expect within a typical Sims home. And it definitely did inspire me to get creative again, because it is something that I have created in my previous builds. However, I just never really ended up recreating it in all of my builds. Put in quite a lot of effort to actually make the fireplace make sense, and you need to have as much space as possible to like work around it as well. And since we had quite a lot of space to work out within this build in particular, I feel like it just worked the best overall within this build. And off to the side where we have this huge living space, I didn't want to keep all of the walls empty or have like a bunch of negative space. I wanted to add as much storage or like some nice simple bookshelves here and there, just like trying to fill up the space as much as possible without making it feel super cluttered or tacky. And the best way I was just able to do that was just by like utilizing this nice simple bookshelves that we got from one of the recent kits, and of course just adding some nice simple modular kitchen cabinet, the wall ones on the top and the bottom. And I feel like it kind of gave it a nice unique design and effect in the sense that it kind of created some additional storage for the space. And of course added a nice simple accent wall behind it, because I feel like that kind of makes it feel a little bit more interesting as well, rather than having these plain white walls going across the entire build. And you guys have probably already seen that we have a bunch of different variations of platforms within the interior and the exterior. So the main living space of the home is on that first platform, but we do also have the nursery and the primary suite on the second platform tier. So it kind of just like gives a huge variation throughout the entire build overall, and I feel like it definitely does make this build a lot more interesting overall as well, especially since we have two different entrances to the home. So not one is really classified as the primary front door. And I of course tried to make sure that I changed up all of the lighting fixtures that we had going across this entire build, regardless of whether it's the interior or the exterior. I tried to use as many unique ones going across the entire build, mainly because I just really don't like having a bunch of different flat spotlights everywhere. Despite being a relatively modern home and it's kind of expected to have a bunch of different spotlights here and there, I still wanted to have some nice unique sort of like pendant lighting features going across in certain areas of the home. And I feel like this home definitely does feature a bunch of different lighting fixtures, which I'm super happy about because it kind of gives some additional character to the rest of the home and the rooms that they are within. But yeah, so we're actually moving on into the primary office area that we have for this build, and it's kind of just like situated right next to where we have one of the front doors. And I just really love how the space feels relatively sizable. I feel like it's not really too big or too small, but I feel like it's perfect for a small little office area like this, especially since it's a family home. I didn't want to take up too much space on like trying to create a huge extravagant office space, or like try to create something that felt a bit too overwhelming. I tried to just like create something that would feel a little bit more realistic and a bit more usable and viable. So I feel like within this home in particular, I feel like I was able to execute a nice, simple, cozy office space area. I just added a nice fireplace and little TV unit area. Of course, added a bunch of different clutter to the desk itself, just like try to populate it and make it feel as realistic as possible. And of course, added some nice, simple storage and bookshelf units off to the back end of the office area itself as well. But yeah, just like tried to make it feel as realistic as possible. And of course, ended up changing the wallpaper within the office area itself as well. I just feel like changing the office space to have a more unique sort of like paneled wallpaper that is kind of different from the rest of the home definitely makes it feel a little bit more formal in my opinion. I ended up going with the modern desk, which came from the Life and Death expansion pack, and I also ended up going for the high school years office chair itself as well. Those are pretty much my two go-to items when it comes to the office spaces themselves within all of my modern builds. I feel like they work very nicely together, and the grown together chair itself feels the most formal out of all of them without looking too clunky or unrealistic. I feel like it definitely works for the vibe that I was trying to go for. And of course, added a nice simple coffee table right in the center of these two armchairs, and just like tried to add some nice small little clutter pieces here and there. And I also noticed how like I cluttered it a little bit too much, to the point where I added this small little like storage unit area right next to where we had the entrance of the office. So I ended up removing it, and I feel like it was definitely the best way to go about it, especially since it just opened up a bunch more space, and I feel like it looked a little bit more interesting like this overall. Despite there being less furniture pieces, I feel like it definitely helped with like trying to make it feel as modern and minimalistic as possible. But yeah, so we're actually moving on into the bedroom that we have on the first floor. So we do actually have two bedrooms on the first floor, this one being the first one, which is right next to where we have the back garden area. And I really love how this home has these small little bedrooms here and there that lead you straight out into the garden. I feel like it feels super luxurious. And if you guys do also have the Grown Together expansion pack, you guys can probably have or house your guests within this room in particular, especially since it's pretty much away from the main areas of the home. This wing of the home pretty much only houses this bedroom as well as the garage area, and then it pretty much leads you into the main sort of living space, which has the kitchen and the living space and stuff. But I feel like this room in particular definitely feels suitable to be utilized as a guest home. And for this bedroom in particular, I didn't want to go for a specific color scheme, so I kind of kept it nice and generic, and I actually really love how it turned out, especially since it worked with the vibe that I was trying to go for, and it felt super cozy with all of the nice simple wooden tones that we had going across all of the furniture pieces. And of course, just utilize this nice dream home decorator bed along with like this dresser, and of course adding a fireplace and a TV unit on top. Just like try to create a simple living space within the bedroom itself. I feel like it's something that is very prominent within these more luxurious modern homes, and it's something that I try to recreate within my Sims 4 builds as well. And since we had quite a lot of glass and like a bunch of different windows here and there throughout this bedroom in particular, especially since we had the skylight right above this bed itself as well. Since we do have 3 overall throughout this entire build, I wanted to cover up some of the windows with these nice simple plain looking curtains, which I believe are the ones that came from the Desert Luxe kit, which are pretty much like my go-to ones when it comes to adding some curtains for my builds, even though I don't really utilize them that much. I feel like they're pretty much like very nice and simple and very versatile to be utilized in any way. So now we're actually moving on into the other side of the home, which houses the nursery and the primary suite. And it might come across weird at first to house the nursery on the first floor. However, I actually really love the end result of placing the nursery and the primary bedroom suite on the first floor, mainly because me personally, I kind of against it when it comes to real life homes and stuff like that. I probably would want to have my own bedroom on the second floor, or like have a generic sort of style. However, for this home in particular, especially with it being in The Sims, I kind of feel like it made a lot more sense to house the nursery on the first floor while also having your primary bedroom suite on the first floor, because they're right next to each other. And in terms of like gameplay, it makes it a lot more easier without having to, like, you know, go up and down the stairs so many times with your kid. And especially since this nursery itself feels super spacious, I feel like you can definitely fit, if you wanted to, you can probably add 2 or 3 more cribs within this bedroom and it'll feel like it would fit perfectly fine, because we do have quite a lot of space to work with. And this bedroom does also have its own ensuite as well. So if you guys somehow needed to have some additional space within this nursery, you guys can definitely obviously renovate that and change it into whatever you guys want it to be. However, I personally found it that it worked very nicely in just like having a very huge, spacious single nursery within this bedroom itself, and I feel like it turned out super nicely overall, especially with all the clutter and the design and the small little pieces that I added throughout this entire room. I feel like it definitely made it feel like a nice, simple, cozy nursery. And I really love the addition of these modular dream home decorator sort of dresser pieces that I had placed and like positioned off to the side on the wall. I feel like it kind of gave it a very fancy and luxurious way of displaying your baby clothes. I feel like it's like a really nice and unique feature rather than having a generic dresser within the room itself. But yeah, I feel like it's like a really cool way of just like utilizing all of the furniture pieces that we got from, whether it's from the Growing Together expansion pack or the Storybook Nursery kit itself. I pretty much just always end up utilizing the nursery crib that came from the Storybook Nursery kit, mainly because I just really love the cot design of it overall. However, the rest of the objects that came from that kit don't really resemble the design and style that I tried to go for, which is this more modern and minimalistic design. But I feel like the Growing Together changing table and the rest of the objects that come from that expansion pack definitely does help with creating a nice, simple, family sort of like suitable nursery, which is the main reason why I just ended up going for that nice simple rocking chair and the other additional furniture pieces and toys and objects that came from that pack as well. But yeah, so we're actually moving on into the primary bedroom suite that I also mentioned a few moments ago that we have on the first floor, right next to where we have the nursery. And I really love how this primary suite turned out, mainly because I just feel like it is a super sizable space. It has quite a lot of access to the rest of the home, regardless of whether it's the office space or the living space itself. And you do also have direct access straight into the back garden area of the home, as well as like being situated right next to where we have the gym area as well. I feel like it's like a nice, suitable area for this bedroom. And yeah, so I just went with one of my favorite designs for this bedroom in particular. We have quite a lot of windows scattered around pretty much all of the rooms throughout this entire home. However, I wanted to really make use of them as much as possible, and especially since we had quite a lot of light and like natural light coming within this build in particular itself as well, I wasn't really too concerned about utilizing a lot of curtains and stuff like that here and there, because I felt like since we had a lot of space to work with, I didn't really mind, you know, covering up a little bit here and there. And I did also end up incorporating some nice pendant lightings here and there, especially within the primary bedrooms. So for this one in particular, I did end up going for the Life and Death expansion pack chandelier, which I feel like looks very suitable and versatile for these modern homes. And yeah, I just really love how it looked within this build overall. And of course, added some spotlights here and there as well, because I feel like despite it being or looking very simple when you add spotlights, I feel like it looks nicer when you add them next to specific lighting, if that makes sense. So if I just had spotlights throughout this entire bedroom, I feel like it would have looked a little bit too basic, especially when it comes to like recording or like taking screenshots. However, once I added that pendant light and the chandelier, I feel like it definitely accentuated the build a lot more and made it look a lot more interesting. And of course, added some nice simple curtains off to the backside of where we had the bed itself as well. And I of course ended up using the Dream Home Decorator kitchen cabinets, the thin versions, as bedside tables, because I just really love the design that it gives off, and I really like how minimalistic and simple it looks, especially since most of the bedside tables that we have throughout the entire game feel super basic and they feel a bit too oversized in my opinion, to the point where I feel like it doesn't really fit or match some bedrooms in particular in my opinion. But I feel like these ones in particular, despite them not being functional, definitely serve the purpose and like look a lot more nicer overall in my opinion. And it definitely does fit that more modern vibe that I'm trying to go for, especially since they're just like plain simple wooden blocks. I feel like it works a lot more nicer as a bedside table as well. But yeah, so we're actually finally moving on into the upstairs now, and we're focusing on creating one of the teenagers' rooms. Now, I didn't really have any family or anyone in mind that I wanted to like add, or like I was building this build for. I was just like going with the sizes of each of the rooms, and I feel like since this room in particular felt like one of the smallest bedrooms that we had overall in the entire home, I feel like it kind of made sense to just turn it into a nice simple teenager's room. So instead I just ended up utilizing this simple single bed, and I decided to use the furniture pieces that had this very strong emphasis on like these wooden textures and stuff, and I feel like that works very nicely within a kid's room like this. And of course just added a nice simple desk in case they need to do any homework and stuff like that, or any type of like research for school, and just added a nice basic simple dresser, because I feel like for a kid or like a teenager's room you don't really need to add anything too special. And I decided to go with the blue color scheme mainly because I feel like the color blue is a little bit more versatile than having like, let's say, like a bright pink or like a purple. I feel like it definitely worked a lot more nicer within this bedroom in particular. And yeah, just added an accent wall here and there, just like tried to make it look as interesting as possible despite it being a kid's room. And I did also end up going for this round carpet with these sort of like kid-like animals on them, and I don't know if it made the room look way too childish. However, I feel like it kind of made it feel more family friendly in a way, so I ended up just like keeping it as it was, and I was really happy with how it looked, especially since the small hints and like hues of blue that we had within the carpet itself definitely tied in well with the rest of the furniture pieces that we had going across the bedroom itself as well. Bear in mind, we do actually have some additional rooms that I don't actually end up showing within the speed build itself, primarily because I feel like it would just make the speed build a little bit too long or time consuming, and I wouldn't really want to bore you guys with showcasing something that you guys have probably already seen, or like repeated stuff such as like bathrooms and en-suites. But if you guys are interested in seeing every single room, I highly recommend you guys stick around towards the end of the video to check out the tour that I have provided for you guys. But yeah, so we're actually onto the second bedroom that we have on the second floor, and I actually really love how this bedroom in particular turned out. I just feel like for some reason all of the colors definitely worked out super nicely together. It was like just like a super cohesive color scheme that I came up with. But yeah, so we're actually moving on into furnishing this small little room that we have on the second floor as well, and I actually just ended up turning it into this small little laundry room area, and I was actually really happy with how this turned out as well, especially since we didn't really have a lot of space to work with anyway, and I just feel like it worked out super nicely. And I tried to ensure that this space felt as small as possible, mainly because for people who don't really have the laundry kit, you wouldn't really end up having to miss out or just like lose out on a lot of space that was furnished, but rather just like a nice small little area that is functional. So you guys can obviously change it up if you guys don't have the laundry day kit into something that is like a nice small little games room, a small additional office. But yeah, so we're actually moving on into one of the primary en-suites that we have on the second floor. And although I don't really tend to show off all of the bathrooms that I create for my builds in particular, I still wanted to show this one mainly because I really love the design and overall look of this bathroom overall, and especially since most of the bathrooms that we have within this build, regardless of whether it's a primary bathroom for that floor or an ensuite, they all pretty much look the same. So I just wanted to show you guys the overall sort of like process of me creating the bathroom. And yeah, I just feel like it fits the overall modern vibe and aesthetic that I try to go for, especially with like incorporating these more modern shelves with the towels on top of them and the additional sort of like small details here and there. Definitely make these bathrooms feel a little bit more interesting rather than like creating like a very generic one. But yeah, so we're actually moving on into the final bedroom that we have for this speed build, and this is relatively a spacious bedroom in my opinion. I feel like it has quite a lot of space to work with, and I actually really love how it turned out, mainly because I just ended up going for some of my favorite furniture pieces for this bedroom in particular. So I just ended up going for this very fancy looking business and hobbies expansion pack bed, along with like these bedside tables which came from the Lovestock expansion pack, which has actually been one of my favorite ones to build and use with recently, mainly because I just feel like they feel a little bit more smaller than the usual bedside tables that we have within the game, and they're also quite versatile, especially since they look quite modern as well and come in a bunch of different colors and stuff like that. So yeah, I feel like they're very suitable for these more modern builds that I try to go for, especially since the handles have this more sort of like brownish color to them. It kind of works out well with the rest of the color scheme that we have going across the rest of the bedroom. And of course added this nice simple dream home decorator modular dresser pieces off to the side, where we have these very tall windows. I decided to place them right below them, and I feel like it worked out super nicely overall, along with adding these nice unique looking bedside lamps as well, and of course adding these small little paintings here and there, just like to ensure that the walls don't look very bare and empty. And for the small minority of people who might be wondering if I will ever be streaming any of my videos and stuff like that, for like doing like speed builds and stuff like that, or like building live, I definitely am considering it, as we have obviously spoke about it in previous builds as well. It is definitely something that I will be starting very soon, and of course if I do end up doing something like that, I will obviously let you guys know through like an alert or like a post on my social media channels, so make sure to stay tuned for stuff like that. But yeah, so we do actually end up adding small little clutter pieces here and there within this bedroom itself as well. Just adding a nice small little walk-in wardrobe area, a nice little proof off to the side, as well as like this huge standalone side mirror, which I feel like looks super fancy and luxurious. And of course this is also one of the other bedrooms that has a skylight placed right above it, which I feel like is kind of like a fancy feature for a family home like this. And of course we're actually moving on into the ensuite for this bedroom, and I just tried to keep it as nice and simple because we don't really have quite a lot of space to work with anyway, and I decided to go with a different style and theme for this bedroom in particular. So instead of going for those floating cabinetry designs, I ended up going for this one which came from the businesses and hobbies expansion pack, and I really love the overall design and the furniture pieces that we got from that pack. I feel like they work very nicely with these modern builds that I tend to create within The Sims 4. And of course I added some bathroom related clutter to this countertop, and that was pretty much it. So I pretty much went around the entire home once again, just added small little details here and there, just like trying to populate all of the hallways as much as possible to ensure that they don't feel bare. And of course went back into the garage area. I tried to add a few stainless steel tabletop counters and cabinets, just like tried to make it feel like an actual serious looking garage area. And of course added some functional tabletop workstations here and there as well to make it feel as functional as possible. Of course if you guys want to change it into something else, I highly recommend you guys to go ahead and do that as well if you guys want to. And we do also go back into the garden to populate that standalone gym room that we have separated from the rest of the home. And I pretty much added all of the necessary gym equipment that we already have within the game currently. And of course, just like decorated it and tried to make it resemble as much of like an at-home gym as possible. But yeah, so that's pretty much all I have for this huge modern family home. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think about leaving a like and subscribing, and comment down below if you guys have any thoughts and suggestions about this build. I would love to hear them in the comment sections below. And I do also have a bunch more videos like this on the channel if you guys are interested in builds like these. But thank you so much again for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video.